What up, Razzballers? 2024 in the books, 2025 on the horizon. We can't get to the horizon without going through the forest, though. We are recapping the 2024 season, heading into 2025. We're going to recap those Razzball championships. I got Dave and Matt with me. I'm Sky. We're going to rock right now with our what we learned from 2024, heading into 2025 football show. What's up, everybody? Good evening, and welcome back to the Razzball Fantasy Football Show. Taking about a week and a half off, trying to kind of give ourselves a break before we jump right back on the saddle and get you ready for 2025. Hope everybody locked in that Razzball Fantasy Football Championship. We had a great time throwing it down here in-house. We did have some great opportunities and some titles won on our side. So congratulations to everybody bringing home the Razzball Fantasy Football titles. I got my man Matty Cruz stepping in tonight. My name is Sky Guasco. I'm your host. You can find me at Sky Guasco on X. You can find Matt at Styles08 and Dave Cruz available at Cruiser128. The rest of the crew is behind the scenes, writing as always, diligent for your 2024 recaps, heading right into Dynasty, into free agency talk, right into the NFL draft, getting ready as we recap 2024, heading into 2025. So keep it locked right here to Razzball on the YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any of the opportunities. We're also available on the podcast as well. That's the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast Show. And you can find us as well available on X at Razzball NFL, and everything available at football.razzball.com. I know a number of you are jumping in already. We appreciate that. What's up, Jamie? Good evening, and welcome everybody into the podcast. Let us know if you got that championship and what your roster looked like. We would love to celebrate those with you. Matt, Dave, good evening. Tonight we're rocking in our biggest surprises for 2024, good and bad. Not all surprises are great, but not all of them are bad. Some of them are exciting. And we're also going to talk about what we learned. It's really important to recap what we learned in 2024 so that we can get better and move forward in 2025. Gentlemen, good evening. Matt, I'll start with you. What's one thing that you look forward off script here heading into 2025, right? You need to recap 2024, which we're going to do for a couple episodes here. But in 2025, like in the off season, do you just tune out for a few months, enjoy some baseball, come back to football in a while, or do you kind of keep your nose in the books throughout the off season? What's your general process? And welcome back. Happy New Year, my man. Let's get into 2025.
Happy New Year to you. Also, I have. Let me hold on. Don't let anybody sign off. I have something to show you.
Love it. Take your time.
I forgot to pick this up earlier before the show.
No, that looks heavy.
Nice.
Is that heavy? What is that? Pure gold? It looks shiny.
Yeah, it's solid gold.
Nice.
This is not your chocolate Easter bunny, buddy. This is solid. That is the home league that I have been attempting to get my second championship. I believe the first, if you can believe this, was 20 years ago. 2004, I played a buddy of mine from high school in the championship. His last championship in the same league was 2008. So, needless to say, it was a little dry around the saloon for both of us for a while. Going into 2025, without being the guy with the spoiler alert, it reminded me of our internal talk when Jamie signed in and gave us a "What up, guys?" We have a surprise coming for the listeners. We don't want to get too deep into it, but what I'm looking forward to is getting into some baseball drafts and enjoying that kind of prep. Moving forward with writing for football, I enjoy the draft. Right, the draft is fun. Do we know where the draft is this year? Anybody want to tell me?
The NFL draft
in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
The NFL draft, yeah. I would.
So that should be a way to highlight Titletown. Which should be just awesome. My guess is probably 300,000 people into that small town for the draft.
Love it.
I don't know that they can handle that many people, but they'll
boost the economy.
Yeah, they'll figure it out.
It will multiply significantly.
Yes, absolutely. So with that, after we get through that, and then we get to kind of into our fantasy draft season through the summer, We've got some leagues that we're starting up, but all I will say is for the loyal listeners, keep listening, keep commenting, stay with us, and there might be some interesting rewards for those longtime listeners down the road as we create some interesting league options. We'll just leave it at that.
I love that. Absolutely. Keep it tuned. And Jamie's popping in here really quick. Let's give him his flowers, as the kids say. 2004 was my first year playing, won the championship. Little rookie success there? Probably not. Jamie's a gamer, made it happen. Let's review the team, gentlemen. Muhsin Muhammad, Terrell Owens, Donovan McNabb. I'm thinking that's the Eagles stack right there. If you had Shady McCoy in that as well, you're looking real nice. Maybe a little Brent Selleck. Looks nice. And then LaDainian Tomlinson helped bring home about a decade worth of championships in fantasy football. So we love the OG rosters there. Well done, Jamie, as always. Day 25, in general, when you review a season, you head out, you dust off the old trophies. Matt, congratulations again. You kind of spit shine your trophy, get it nice and pretty to show the friends. But then we got to move on and win it next year. How do you move on to another season? How do you spend your off season generally? And Happy New Year, my man.
Happy New Year. I'm still in the off-season football learning phase. I usually, by this time, I've started shifting my focus to baseball. So I've got a few fantasy baseball leagues I still play in, and I still love those. But I've got to keep my foot in the water now. And as I kind of get more and more involved on social media, I'm more around people that football is their 24/7, 365 type of gig. So I'm interacting with those people more in the off season. And as far as my process goes, I do as much by the seat of my pants as is probably more than most people are comfortable with. But I'm going to be a little bit more organized going forward. So I'm looking forward to ramping up and getting back into football right away.
I like it. Absolutely. And I want to give a shout out to our baseball family here at Razzball, right? The baseball is the flagship. We're football guys on the screen, but all of us are baseball guys at heart as well, right?
Yeah.
So we all love baseball. We play in a lot of baseball fantasy leagues. Some of us still play softball. Handful of us has-beens trying to make it happen. So keep it tuned right here to Razzball. Jump over to the baseball side. They're also running podcasts. They got articles out as well. So when you go to the website and you're checking out our off-season content on the football side, spend 3 extra minutes, click on the baseball tab as well, and make sure you get those baseball championships also. There's nothing better. I'm telling you, boys. If you play basketball and hockey and all that stuff, awesome, cool. I'm a baseball football guy personally. I watch the other sports, but for fantasy and my fandom is really in football and baseball. Winning a fantasy baseball championship and winning a fantasy football championship in the same year, there's just something about it. A little extra frosting on the cake. So keep it locked here to Razzball and make it happen.
Yeah, Razzball is the first fantasy site I visited outside of the platforms I was playing on.
There we go.
But I was in a work league, a rotisserie work league, and one of the guys came up to me one day and he goes, "You know what? You should go check out this site, Razzball." And this was 15, 16 years ago. And, I'm going, wow, this is great. It looked like people were having fun creating content. and pretty much there weren't too many other sites that looked like they were having fun. But Gray and those guys, Gray, Rudy, those guys, they look like they're having a blast. So I gravitated here.
Well, Matt, you know what we say, come for the advice, stay for the laughs. That's what we're doing here at Razzball. We got a number of slogans. Gentlemen, great to see you both. We're ready to go. We're kicking off the frosting. The rest of the boys will be on the program as we go. Articles are written and ready to go at razzball.com on the football tab. Again, check out our friends over at baseball as well. But we're here for the football side, boys, and it doesn't stop. Let's get into our biggest surprises. This could be awesome. This could be not so awesome. Matt, I'm going to kick it off with you and let you kick it off. What was your biggest surprise in 2024 in fantasy football that was either like, hey, man, I didn't see this coming and I was thrilled, or, man, I was hoping this didn't happen and it did, not stoked? What was your biggest surprise? Your first one. We each have two. What was your first biggest fantasy football surprise of 2024?
When I started doing research at around draft season, especially best ball season, I started delving deeper into, I guess what you'd call handcuff running backs or deeper running backs, Kamani Vidal and Audric Estime or Estime, guys like that. And I settled on three names. I settled on Bucky Irving, I settled on Ray Davis, and I settled on Tyrone Tracy Jr. Didn't know a lot about them. I knew one had been a receiver. One was undersized, played at Oregon. So, there's not, the publicity is wide at Oregon. But when you're on the East Coast, you don't hear a lot about the Eaches on the West Coast. And I know you guys are West Coast guys where you live now. I'm a West Coast guy by birth, but I haven't been home in quite some time. And I will tell you that my drafting was backwards. And I ended up with Bucky in most leagues by picking him up, or best ball drafting him extremely late. But I prioritized, and you'll see this in my next example as well. I prioritized those running backs that were drafted higher in the NFL that I thought were in better situations. Number one, I'm not a Devin Singletary fan. So Tyrone Tracy was at the top of my list. I have been a James Cook fader and thought Ray Davis might come in and take some of those carries. He clearly did not, and James Cook proved me wrong. But Bucky Irving, by all reports and scoring, was a league winner. If you rostered him and started him smartly, probably the last 7 to 8 to 9 weeks of the season, you probably, if you have anybody else to play, quarterback and receiver and whatnot, then you probably won your league with a guy named Bucky Irving. So what I learned is that there may be running backs that are drafted can make a difference, whereas in the past, rookie running backs usually did not make a huge impact. So I will say I will have my eyes on running backs as they come down in the draft. I probably will not be the young man from Boise State because that's too easy. So we'll have to dig a little bit deeper. But yeah, give me all the Bucky. If I was not drafting Christian McCaffrey at 1.01 in 2025, it would be Bucky Irving.
Bucky Irving, RB 15 overall in PPR, better in points per game there. Rachaad White was that guy 2 years ago, 2023. He was RB 7, right? So a lot of people were picking him early and often, rightfully so. He was one of my fades just because I don't think he's a great running back per touch. But also, I knew about Bucky. Obviously, I'm a duck and bias. But nobody saw what Bucky did, not even me, coming this year. But you grab him as a late round handcuff, like a what the hell guy. And all of a sudden, you're like, wait a minute, the kid can play a little bit. Then Rachaad misses time. Baker Mayfield's better than a top 12 quarterback. And all of a sudden, you're like, uh-oh, we got a diamond in the rough out here. So those guys are so clutch, Matt. You had Puka Nacua 2 years ago. Let's not let that slide. Now we got Bucky Irving. We'll find out who your late round superstar is again.
Yeah, and the key for me, if you pay for a football subscription, right, for the TV through YouTube or whatever, for me, living in the Tampa area, I saw Bucky play every week. And it's different when you read a box score than when you watch with your eyes. So what I saw weeks before the box score showed it was the kid could play football in the NFL and he could do it at a very high level. So that's when I make the decision to drop names that do, Blake Corum's another good running back, and he'll have his time, but he wasn't the guy. And Jonathan Brooks was injured, was not the guy. You could see that Jonathan Brooks wasn't on the field. You could see that Corum was not getting any carries behind Kyron Williams, but you could see if you watch the games, don't just watch your favorite team, right? Watch what can help you move forward in fantasy and get wins. And for me, that was huge watching Bucky Irving, and the eye test said he passes.
Totally agree. So shouts out Bucky Irving and a lot of those other late round stashes. Well done, Matt. Dave, we'll move on to you. What was your first big surprise in 2024?
Well, mine's a bit more specific. It centers around a team that I had some belief that the offense would be a lot more potent than they wound up being, and that was the New York Football Jets. I I remember being on a show very, very early before the season started around the Razzball draft time with Matt and Derek, and me proclaiming very loudly that Aaron Rodgers will be fine. Matt shaking his head up and down. He remembers. I appreciate you not smashing eggs in my face for being that guy. I just couldn't have been more wrong. I thought Breece Hall had a real shot at not being the running back one. Turned out both of the guys that I thought would be running back one weren't even close. So the Jets kind of were a letdown, and it got even worse because I invested fairly heavily in Garrett Wilson, and as soon as the Jets traded for Davante Adams, my heart sunk. I knew it was only going to be a matter of time before Davante and Aaron started just playing pitch and catch for the most part. I mean, Wilson had a pretty good season. I mean, no question. But after watching him this year, I wonder if he's ever going to be even close to the level a guy like Justin Jefferson is. I mean, there's just it's at this point it's night and day. You see it year after year, and a guy has a catch rate under 60%. You know, it doesn't matter if he's getting 160, 170 targets a year if he's only catching 100 of the balls, right? So I thought this would be a great year for him to take a step forward. He had had presumably a more accurate quarterback throwing him the ball, and that team was just a dumpster fire from the beginning. And so I got kind of burned loading up on guys like Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. And I'm just wondering if Breece is ever going to be the same guy he was before he injured his knee, right? So that was a little bit of a hard lesson. I invested in those guys very heavily, and I usually wind up looking back on a season and going, I probably should diversify my portfolio more. But I end up gravitating towards the same guys, usually at the top of the draft. So, I mean, my next one that I'll talk about is the flip side of that. So,
yeah, fair enough. And again, it's tough to get away from those marquee names, right? Breece Hall is like, you take the risk, right? If you're like, okay, this guy's a top guy, everyone's drafting first rounder, second round, maybe, whatever. We know what the potential is, but he had the injury. So if I fade him, it could come back and crush me.
sure.
So you go for it, and then it blows up in your face. Now, again, he wasn't hurt this year. That's the trouble, right? Christian McCaffrey got injured, burned everybody that picked him number one. It happens. He got injured. It happens.
Yeah.
Breece was healthy, quote unquote, almost the entire season. But they had other running backs coming in, and I'm looking right now, Davante Adams in the playoffs, wide receiver 7, right?
Yeah.
Wide receiver 7 for Davante Adams, of course, a huge 43-point game in your wild card round there to help you move on. So that was massive. But then we saw, look, final game of the season, week 18, when most of us weren't playing at all, him and Rodgers just go nuts. Garrett Wilson, again, great player, but I think that'll change, Dave, moving forward without Aaron Rodgers in New York or New Jersey, whatever, with Davante Adams. But they just, once they meant it, and you and I were on an episode for trade targets one week. This week, I don't know, I'll make it up, week 9, 10 or whatever, when the trade happened. And I said I was trading Garrett Wilson. And it was like, it's not, Garrett Wilson's playing well. Let's not worry about Davante yet. It did take a week or two, but after that, Garrett Wilson wasn't trash or anything, but he was not what you drafted. And that was tough. So we don't know that's coming on draft season, but that was tough in trades.
Yeah, you drafted Wilson. You drafted Garrett Wilson as a top 6 wide receiver for the most part.
Yep.
And he wasn't even close to that down the stretch.
He was not, unfortunately. All right. My first biggest surprise was the rookie quarterbacks. The rookie quarterback class this year was a lot of fun. We did not really expect early in the draft season that so many rookie quarterbacks would be drafted in the first round. However, of course, they were. Now, in the playoffs specifically, Jaden Daniels was the number 1 quarterback overall, 31 points per game in the championship, just ahead of Jared Goff, Lamar Jackson, and Baker Mayfield. Overall, on the season, we had a number of our rookie quarterbacks do very well. Jaden Daniels was number 4 overall, This is 6-point touchdown leagues, but he was even better in 4-point with the rushing upside. He was number 4, 22.5 fantasy points per game. Bo Nix for the Broncos was at 18 points per game. That's good enough for 9 there. Caleb Williams, I know Matt and I throw shade, and rightfully so. A's a Bear for Matt, B's USC for me, and I just didn't think the kid was number 1. We both had Jaden Daniels ahead of him. I rest my case. He was number 15. Now, he didn't destroy your teams necessarily, but the number 1 overall pick and where people were drafting him with the upside, it wasn't what we thought. It was what we had with Anthony Richardson last year. He got injured, and then we had Caleb Williams this year. He was healthy. 15.5 points per game is just not what you need from your QB1. He faded to a QB2 later in the season, but people kept running him over there. First couple games of the season, 7, 9, 19, 11, and then 9, 9, 6. We just can't have that. In the playoffs, he was 9, 22, and 7 fantasy points from a quarterback. It's almost tough to do. So the rookie quarterbacks overall were top heavy, and they played well. Drake May took him a minute to start, but he played well, and he had some ups and downs on a very bad team. And then you had other guys coming through, right? Obviously, J.J. McCarthy lost to the season, unfortunately, very early. So had a nice run for the rookie quarterbacks. And I think that we're going to be much better moving forward. Of course, Michael Penix getting the start later on. We didn't see enough of him, but the little bit we did see, there's a lot of promise there. So we root for fantasy points. We don't root for Huskies. So shout out to Michael Penix moving forward. But the rookie quarterbacks were a surprise for the positive. Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix for what he played. And, you know, obviously Drake May and the couple spurts he played well with. We'll see what happens in New England with firing their head coach and the whole thing. And then, unfortunately, it was kind of disappointing as well. Caleb Williams and J.J. McCarthy getting injured as well. So kind of a, 60% joy, 40% disappointment. But I think overall, this class of quarterbacks in the top played very, very well in general. And I expect big things from them in the long term. So very excited about these rookie quarterbacks overall. That was my first big surprise. Matt, what was your second big surprise?
It goes hand in hand. Well, first of all, I think you mentioned a guy named Bo Nix. What college? I'm going to look him up. What college did Bo Nix go to?
He went to Oregon. He went to Oregon.
All of them.
And Auburn.
Dave's answer might be right. Where did he end his college career?
He ended with Oregon, and he had the second most starts before this year's Oregon quarterback, Gabriel, passed that up. Also, fun fact, which is not fun at all. It's actually horrendous. Good thing I like Bo Nix now. Bo Nix's first college start ever was at Auburn against Oregon, and he beats Oregon to upset them, which we don't love. 2 years later, he comes to Eugene. We all love him now. He played very, very well, of course. The rest is history. So shouts out to my boy Bo Nix, and got a tough matchup this week in Buffalo. But I'll tell you what, if Josh Allen's not 100%, I think the Browns Browns, Buccaneers, Broncos are a little bit exciting this week. All right, Matt, what was number 2 here for you for the big
number 2 for me is the fact, or my opinion, that fantasy football players get caught up in draft hype for wide receivers based on where those receivers are really drafted in the NFL versus actually going out and looking at tape, looking at opponents, looking at the structure of the offense they come from. I said from the beginning, everybody that wants to take Maserati Marv at the end of the first round or the middle of the second round can have all of the Marvin Harrison Jr. that they want. They can also have all of the Malik Neighbors they want. They can also have all of the Xavier Worthy they want. To me, the best receiver coming out of this class and the guy that I was targeting in the 9th to 13th round was Brian Thomas Jr. He comes from the tree that says LSU produces defensive backs in the past and currently, but it produces wide receivers like there's nobody's business. So for me, it's trust your eyes, but also realize that there are certain colleges that kick out NFL-ready receivers. Right now, for me, that college is LSU. I believe Ohio State can become that with the group that they have now. That the freshman that they have, I think his last name is Smith.
Oh, God.
Jonathan Smith.
Jeremiah.
Just an absolute baller. And Puka is also a baller. But I don't think they're going to overtake what LSU has brought. Now, LSU is not going to kick out a receiver like Brian Thomas Jr. But again, I go back to you don't necessarily have to draft your fantasy team based on where that player was drafted by the NFL. Marv may end up to have the best career of all of this rookie class, but he's also in an offense where a quarterback runs a lot. He's also in an offense where the quarterback is smaller in stature, and he's in an offense that didn't have enough to throw the ball downfield all the time. And by the way, their offense was led by James Conner. That guy was an absolute beast. And all of us that drafted James Conner, we said, well, if he can stay healthy. The Jaguars had Sunshine throwing the football when he was healthy, and Evan Ingram. Everything from there was going to be Brian Thomas Jr. And again, like I said with Bucky Irving, if you waited him out and you watched with your eyes, the same as Brian Thomas, the reason Brian Thomas didn't have 9, 10, 11, 12 catches in a game is because Mac Jones is not good at football. And Trevor Lawrence was not being protected and was not able to get the ball to him. This guy would have had an amazing rookie season above and beyond what he had if he would have had mediocre to average quarterback play consistent throughout the season. So again, I repeat it for the third time. Do not necessarily worry where the person gets drafted by the NFL teams. Look at the team they get drafted by. Make a decision based on film that you've watched and feedback that you hear from real analysts to be OCs, college coaches, and just watch the tape, and you will know that Brian Thomas was the best receiver, along with Malik Neighbors. And by the way, where did they come from? Both came out of LSU. So probably the two best. And by the way, don't sleep on Ladd McConkey, but I was wrong on him, so I won't bring him up.
There we go. Yeah, I agree, man. These wide receivers I'm going to talk about a little bit further here in a second. Dave, how about you? Biggest surprise number 2?
Yeah, for me, it was more specific. So apparently I misunderstood the homework assignment. So if you want to put me in the corner with the conical hat, I'll go sit there. But I fanned on the dynamic in Los Angeles between Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. I thought Cooper Kupp coming back this year was going to have a much bigger year than he wound up having. And I thought that might come somewhat at the expense of Puka. So I was kind of unwilling to pay the price that Puka was going for. And it's kind of ironic because he's probably one of my larger dynasty steals. I got him at you get him early in dynasty drafts in the 4th round. And he's just a steal at that price. But I was pretty sure that Cooper Kupp was going to come back and be more like 2021 Cooper Kupp and less like 2023 Cooper Kupp, and it just didn't materialize. And I got to tell you, Puka's probably going to be even more coveted next year. I may not want to pay that price again, but I can guarantee you I will not overlook him next year. He missed some time this year, so the year wasn't what it could have been. But when he played, he was everything that Kupp was in 2021. He was getting just targeted all over the field. He would catch everything that was near him. He was just a complete stud. So I can absolutely say with a straight face that I missed on Puka Nacua this year.
Yeah, fair enough. And again, shouts out to Styles a couple years ago before we all knew who Puka was. Matt did throw him at the end of all of his lineups, and the rest is history. This year, Dave, I was with you. I'll piggyback on this. I'm actually going to piggyback on both of yours with my next one here. But first, Dave, with you, I'm a Kupp guy from the beginning. Anybody that plays on red turf in college, I just have to believe in. So Eastern Washington, shouts out. Kupp has been amazing his entire career when healthy.
Yeah.
He was incredible. He set the record. He set number of records, right? Won the Triple Crown in 2019, blah, blah, blah. Win the Super Bowl, do all this stuff. Comes back, he gets injured. But now he's healthy in preseason, so I'm like, you know what? I'm all in. Then he was a draft day steal, in my opinion. So I'm like, this guy's a first rounder if healthy, and he's like the end of the 2nd, 3rd round. So I got him everywhere. It was great while it lasted, and then it was horrible. Yeah. And it was great for a little bit, and then it was bad again. and it was really tough. And obviously he literally single-handedly kicked people out of the champion playoffs.
I can guarantee you I probably personally did as much to drive his price up over the course of the entire draft season as anybody. I was drafting him when he was going in like the 4th and 5th rounds. I was grabbing him everywhere.
Of course, Matt and I did mock draft Mondays every Monday for about 3 months, and AJ Brown, Cooper Kupp, some of these guys we drafted. Alvin Kamara in the 7th round. We were getting these guys nonstop. Like, this is ridiculous. And sure enough, those draft day prices panned out for the most part. But anyway, yes, Puka Nacua is the real deal, and we're going to see that moving forward. This isn't an official thing I am learning moving forward because I've known this for a while, but something to remember for everybody. Matt Stafford, as a quarterback, finds his guy, locks onto him, and he becomes that dude. It was Calvin Johnson for years and years and years in Detroit. It became Puka Nacua, it became Cooper Kupp, and now it's Puka Nacua. And it's Cooper Kupp when healthy, but Cooper just getting old fast. So now it's Puka Nacua, and so keep an eye on them moving forward. All right, gentlemen, my second and our final big surprise here is rookie receivers. I talked about rookie quarterbacks. I'll piggyback on Matt's. It's rookie receivers. He mentioned Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Ladd McConkey. Jalen McMillan was in that as well, and Marvin Harrison. Marvin Harrison, of course, was kind of a dud for us, unfortunately, but the rest of them really did really well. Brian Thomas was wide receiver 4 overall in PPR. He would have been a little bit lower if CeeDee Lamb played the last game of the season. Malik Neighbors missed a couple games. Ladd McConkey missed a couple of games. So Brian Thomas probably would have fallen a little bit in points per game, but overall he did stay healthy, and that matters. He was wide receiver 4, and he was number 1, folks, in PPR in the playoffs. He came through with you when it mattered the most, and he dominated one people's leagues. We love that. Brian Thomas was wide receiver 4. Malik Neighbors, with whoever the Giants wanted to send out at quarterback, was still wide receiver 6 overall in fantasy points per game. Wide receiver 4 in points per game, though, at 18 in PPR. We love that. Ladd McConkey, also took him a minute to get going in LA, but once he did after the bye week, he finished up as wide receiver 12 in PPR, played well in the fantasy playoffs. In the championship game, put up a 30-burger for you at the wide receiver position. We love that. And then Jalen McMillan, again, took a minute for him with the Bucks, but we saw him blow up as soon as Chris Godwin went down, and he played very well also down the stretch, though, when Mike Evans was out also. So once again, we don't root for Huskies, but we do root for fantasy points. We love that. Another Husky, Rome Odunze, just not his fault. I mean, Caleb Williams was overthrowing guys constantly. Matt and I threw shade on Caleb Williams for personal reasons because we're jaded. Then the football season started, and it was like, the kid's talented. He can throw out of the pocket, and he's got great weapons, but he's overthrowing guys. Like, his intended air yards was one of the worst in the NFL constantly, right? And he made this comment that his punter, we don't need him, and then his punter ended up with more yards kicking than he did throwing. Not a good look for the young man, but unfortunately, Caleb Williams just wasn't it. That ended up falling on Rome Odunze there as well. So I think Rome is a great talent. Jalen McMillan, both those guys went to Washington, beat my Ducks 3 times. Thank you very much. Very, very good talents there. I think all these guys are going to be awesome moving forward. Marvin Harrison will be better moving forward. The Cardinals got to get better, or Kyler's got to figure it out, but he'll be fine moving forward. But these guys were awesome. The first 2 specifically, though, Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors doing it on the teams they did with the weapons they did, very impressive. The Jags were horrendous otherwise, and we know what the Giants were not doing. So those 2 guys are stars, coming forward here. So it's kind of impossible to right now to compare anybody to Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, but 3 years ago, right, they were kind of the same gig. So we'll see what happens with these 2 young guys if they can get steady quarterback play moving forward. All right, that's going to wrap up our biggest surprises. So once again, just kind of a quick recap. It was in no particular order: the Jets offense, rookie quarterbacks, Bucky Irving, Marvin Harrison, the dynamic between Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, and then the rookie wide receivers as well. We're going to take a quick transition here and get into what we learned. But first, I want to throw it up to Jamie, who's been in the comment section, just throwing down a handful of notes here. We're going to throw a bunch of these up, and then we'll get moving down the line here. Only baseball that he watches, gentlemen, is Ricky Wild Thing Vaughn playing for the then Indians. Of course, nowadays, it's the Guardians. But we don't keep it PC all the time on here. That is going to be the Cleveland Indians of the Pedro Serrano, right? We got Dorn at third base.
Willie Mays Hayes.
Hell of a catch. Don't ever can do it again. Yeah, I mean, Lou Brown at the helm, RIP. Great squad. We got Joe Boo in the locker room with the vibes. Great move there. Chuba Hubbard and Chase Brown, two of his biggest surprises as well. Everybody drafted them as starters. We did not expect them to end up as RB top 12, maybe with the Bengals, but Zach Moss was in town early and then definitely not on the Panthers. Chuba had a great season. Quentin Johnson actually catching some passes, throwing a little shade there. I like that. Quentin Johnson next year, I love it. Josh Palmer was my guy. Quentin Johnson will be this year. The Browns winning more than one game. And by the way, beat the eventual Super Bowl winning Baltimore Ravens, which was very impressive. Then we got Brian Thomas Jr., who we just talked about as well. Jamie was also high on Cooper Kupp, as we all were, unfortunately. Marvin Harrison, almost the exact same stats of his dad's rookie year. Marvin Harrison Sr., I believe, ended up being pretty good later in his career. So we'll see what happens with Marvin Harrison. For the kids out there, Google Marvin Harrison Sr. for one of the best wide receivers of all time. And is it a true Oregon Ducks mascot based off of Donald Duck? That is correct. And a lot of people call the Duck Puddles, which is his street name, but the Duck is the official name of the mascot, which is pretty ridiculous. Okay, gentlemen, let's get into the what we learned. Styles, I'm going to kick it back to you. What's the first thing you learned in 2024 that you're going to be carrying with you into 2025?
Speaking of puddles, I know you guys are music aficionados. If you have not treated yourself to Puddles Pity Party, Google that when you have a chance.
Wow.
Yes. Puddles Pity Party is an absolutely frightening sight to see with an absolutely amazing voice.
Yeah.
So, Puddles Pity Party.
Shout out my boy, Michael Geyer. Go ahead.
Got it.
For me, do you know Puddles Pity Party there, Dave?
I do not, but I will take your recommendation to heart and check them out.
All I'm going to say is don't judge a book by its cover.
Yes. If you've seen the movies or the posters for a movie called Terrifier, which I've watched about 5 minutes and I thought it was terrible, but a lot of the youngsters apparently like it as a slasher, blood and gore type movie. Don't judge a book by its cover. And I'm with Jamie. I don't like clowns either. I don't believe Puddles is a full clown. He does have makeup. I don't know that I would call him a clown. But just listen to the voice. Maybe just cover your eyes when you do it. But I digress. To me, one of the things that I learned moving from 24 to 25, and I know we don't have a lot of time to go into the eaches. For me, I think that I learned that the offensive coordinator, especially with younger players, is probably more important for fantasy than the head coach is. And I look at the fact that I think Dan Campbell is a really fun story for the Lions, but the Lions are not the Lions of 2024 without Ben Johnson. So for me, OC might be more important for you to look at when considering your fantasy assets moving forward. And I'll leave it at that. If you guys have other examples of OCs that you think are more important than the head coach, I'm more than willing to hear it, but I know we're kind of running long at this point.
All I'm going to say is I think it really depends on what type of head coach the head coach is. So an OC for Kyle Shanahan, yeah, maybe. An OC for Sean McVay, maybe. Matt LaFleur, maybe. But an OC for like Bill Belichick, right? Dan Campbell, some of these defensive guys, Brian Daboll, sure. Like the play caller in general is very important in that, that OC. So Matt, I totally agree with you. And we'll see. Ben Johnson, obviously the top commodity, but the coaching episode we have every year on this program, Bob did such a great job with those episodes. We're going to have to fill big shoes on that one. But the coaching changes episode on this show is always one of my favorite to do, but it's one of my favorite to watch and learn from because those coaching changes mean so much when you get the continuity rolling throughout the NFL. Dave, what was your first thing you learned in 2024 heading into 2025?
It's not something that struck me in the face. It's just kind of a continuing lesson when I play fantasy, and that's loading up on a position is not necessarily a big benefit. I tend to, when I'm drafting, I tend to go where people aren't. So if, I see a draft heading heavily to running back, I'll start drafting more receivers. And if I see the vice versa, then I will go the other way. So a lot of what I saw this year was people loading up on wide receivers more so than usual. And I think that kind of was detrimental. For me, it wasn't a terrible strategy, but it didn't completely work out. So I like it when I can have a more balanced draft. I like to mix and match positions. And, even to the point of if I see a top quarterback fall, then I'm going to grab him, even if I don't really want to do that in a one quarterback league. I think having a guy like Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, even in a one quarterback league, is a huge advantage if you can get him later than the second round. So, for me, loading up on a position just isn't always a great way to go. And I've got to kind of, mix and match better when I'm drafting.
That's a great one. I'm going to talk a little bit about roster stuff here in a second. We have some dedicated episodes, everybody, coming up later this spring, specifically on roster construction, what it looks like, what the terms are. You hear things like zero RB, hero RB, QB heavy, tight end premium, super flex. For anybody new to fantasy football, for the OGs, it's all commonplace. But for anybody new to fantasy football, some of that stuff is a new language, right? So we're going to go through all that kind of stuff. But to Dave's point, it is important to diversify your roster with players, but also the way you draft positionally. I like that one a lot. And we'll go deeper into that one as the spring comes along. I'm going to piggyback on that one here just a little bit and get into just playing with fun, funky roster and league settings. Now, I've been doing this for years and years and years, so it's not something I learned new this year. I'm just more committed to doing it, certainly in the leagues that I commission. So if I got a group of buddies and I'm like, hey guys, let's do a fantasy football league. I'll take care of all the semantics. You guys just need to pay me money and draft. I'm going to really bat for, let's do an entirely flex league. Every position is flex. We still start 9 guys, 10 guys, whatever, but we do super flex, but 3 quarterback positions. We do 7 roster spots, but they're all flex. You could do 7 wide receivers. You could do 6 tight ends. You could do 7 running backs. I don't care what you do, but you can play up to 3 quarterbacks in the league, and you can do all other flex positions. The drafts, guys, are so fun. People go 8 running backs in a row. They don't draft any tight ends. It's a lot of fun with those. So that's a funky one. The full flex is what I've been really digging. If you have a smaller league, you can't do more than 12 with this, but I've been doing 3 quarterback leagues. I do 2 quarterback minimum and then a super flex option as well. So you have a lot of teams starting 3 quarterbacks. And you're like, whoa, who's left? That's the point. That's 24 quarterbacks started every week, but then you have, 36 even. So you're doing backups. Sometimes it gets really disgusting, but that's the point of a super flex is you can do a non-quarterback there as well. You can do all sorts of and dropping other positions, right? I'm going to get into one specifically for my last one here to end us, but maybe you just flex it up and drop positions entirely. So for me, funky settings, do bunch of points. I used to do a league. I didn't do this because guys like Eli Manning were winning championships and I just couldn't stand it. So we got rid of it. But we used to do a point per completion for quarterbacks. Matt Styles will love this one. I forget what year it was. 2011. I'll make it up. I don't remember. Matt Flynn from LSU played 1 game for Green Bay when Aaron Rodgers decided to take a day off, right? Unbelievable. 6 touchdowns. Okay. He scored 90 fantasy points in this league for completions, touchdowns, bonuses, all this stuff. Mike Vick, the night that he blitzed Washington on with the Eagles, 94 points, right? With our bonuses and our completions. I was like, okay, Eli Manning, right? Those guys were 60, averaging 60 points per game.
Points in that game.
Exactly. So some of those things are kind of ridiculous, but we made it fun. Sometimes you have running backs or tight ends only. If you play with tight ends, they do not get points for PPR or anything, but they get 10 points if they score a touchdown, right? So they get a 0 or a 10 or a 20 or a 30, right? So that's a big one too. Just some funky, weird stuff. Make sure you do it before the season. Do not change things mid-season, but anything you do is universal. It's a lot of fun. Dave, you have a couple comments about roster construction before we get into Matt's second.
Okay, now I'm thinking I'm the one that's off.
It's okay. You froze a little bit. Go ahead, though. We can hear you.
Okay. Am I back or was I gone? Or
you froze on your screen, but just keep talking. We can hear you. No worries. We got you back. You're all good. Go ahead. Okay. When you get us, let us know, Dave. Matt, go ahead and let us know your second what we learned, and Dave, we'll come back to you here in just a little bit. Looks like we got a little bit of a delay. So, Styles, if you're ready, give us your second what we learned for 2024. You got to unmute yourself. Oh, looks like you're on mute, Matt.
Full mute. So we've had strike two for us for the show tonight.
No problem.
I will tell you that I was not sold on running backs going to new teams, except I didn't know. It looks like I knew. I touted my number one running back for the year to be Saquon Barkley over CMC, other guys. And most of the time I wasn't drafting at the top, so it felt better to say, oh, well, my number one guy is Saquon Barkley. So, look, he just happens to fall to kind of where I'm sitting in the draft order. So I'm good with that. And by the way, I think he's going to be the best. Well, it turns out he probably was real close to being the best. Derrick Henry, Jamar Gibbs, there's some other guys that put up insane numbers as well. But I think that what we learned is if a running back is a stud running back, and maybe they were in a less than perfect situation, Josh Jacobs with the Raiders, and they move to the right situation, I think they can be league winners. They can
Jacobs with the Packers.
Can stay healthy. They can get the good carries. They can get the catches. They can be the focus of the offense. And by the way, they can put up big numbers. So you've got Josh Jacobs. You've got Derrick Henry. You've got Saquon Barkley. There's a name escaping me. There was a third big name, Joe Mixon. Right,
yeah.
Was an absolute stud at the beginning of the year.
Aaron Jones, running back 14. Aaron Jones.
Mixon and Jones went through a little bit of injury here and there. But if you look at their per game, their per touch, over 16 games or 17 games, I mean, they put up elite fantasy numbers. This was one of Aaron Jones' best seasons. And I'd go on record as saying it was probably Josh Jacobs' best season.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't close. You and I talked about the over-under on Derrick Henry touchdowns being 20. Where did he land, right? I mean, just smash that info. And Saquon was Eric Dickerson light. So to me, don't fade running backs, but also don't get caught up in zero running back, hero running back, any of that. I think that what I learned again is you draft the way your team best suits your mentality for fantasy football. Whether that means who you want to watch play, who you think is going to be. We're all analysts. We're all guessing at the end of the day, right? We have analytics behind us, but it comes down to who you want to watch play each week and who you think is going to bring the best return. So I tend to like slow drafts where I can make that decision. By the way, editor's note, I am not the 8-hour clock dude, never will be. I prefer 2-hour clocks at the longest, but can live with a 4-hour clock. So that's what you get from me. Trust your running backs when you know, again, what your eyes tell you, right? Josh Jacobs is a pretty good running back, played for a pretty crappy team for a few years. So give him a shot.
And I faded Josh Jacobs every year. I was on here hating on him every summer. And everyone's like, oh, but he was RB7. He was RB. I'm like, yeah, I know. He scores touchdowns. That's what he's good at. That's awesome. He's not a great running back by himself. Goes to the Packers. I immediately jumped on when free agency. I was like, guys, guess what? I'm a big fan of Josh Jacobs now because he can beat Josh Jacobs on the Packers and dominate. And he sure did. Matt, I'm going to throw a couple more to you, and then Dave will get back to you. You are back and ready to go, my man. J.K. Dobbins. Now he's holding up the rear here at 24, RB24, but he missed 4 games. And he's coming off that catastrophic injury. But J.K. Dobbins was awesome throughout the season, right? And he's much better than RB24 and PPR in points per game because he missed 4 weeks, unfortunately. Another couple guys here. DeAndre Swift started off super hot for the Bears because, of course, they couldn't throw the ball for a while. He ended up at RB19. Not a bad season from him. We just mentioned Aaron Jones and Joe Mixon, 13 and 14 in PPR there as well. So again, let's keep track of that. When free agency comes up, guys, we have guys starting to float around a little bit. We're going to cover all free agency, obviously, and break it down to you. But let's not forget about the running backs. Much easier to just say, hey, dude, run over the left tackle when I say hike. Okay, and do it. You're not learning a playbook necessarily, right? Wide receivers, tight ends especially, they got to learn a lot more than running backs do. So when you get a guy that's just a stud going to a team, especially an upgrade in the offense, I like that a lot. So, Matt, that's a great one there. Dave, I'm going to dial back just a second for you because you had a couple comments on my last one, and then we're going to dive into your thing that you learned the most here. But we were getting into just kind of roster construction, some funky plays. Give us maybe 30 seconds on that, and then let us know what you learned here in 2024.
Okay, so one thing I learned is that when everybody else freezes, they're not the problem. So that's when I bail.
Technology 101. Great job.
That's when I bail on the broadcast and come back with a fresh start. So that was my little 1B thing I learned. Am I going to my number 2 thing now, or are we back to number 1?
No, sure. Go ahead. Your
okay.
What you learned there.
So,
yeah, we don't go to number 2 till after the show, but you can go on to your second what we learned.
Fair.
Got it, man. I'll hold it until then. So the thing I learned, and again, it's a continuing education type of thing, is to once you get into draft season in fantasy football, especially when you're around a bunch of people that are really smart about the game, is what ends up happening is somewhat of a groupthink situation. So especially around rookies. So you start getting people like getting real hyped and things like that, and it just snowballs, and everybody's talking about them. And it's just a guy like Kamani Vidal. I can't say I was ever real high on him, but I know a lot of people were. It's that kind of situation. I never really heard in the real world people talking about how good this guy was and how pro ready he was. But in the community, there was this big groundswell for that guy and other guys like him. It's really a lot about rookies. And this is no shade on anybody in particular. There's a lot of wish casting that goes into this business. And, it's picking and choosing which guys. And what Matt said really makes a lot of sense. Trust your eyes. Do the work, do the leg work, trust your eyes, watch the games, watch the film. You can do a lot in a spreadsheet, but do as much as you can around the game itself and formulate your own opinions. And that's something that I'm continuing to work on.
Yeah, and let me piggyback on that real quick. I've seen this, especially in home leagues, but now I've seen it in leagues where we kind of cross-pollinate and see these folks go back and forth into different leagues. Dave and I ended up in, 3 or 4 leagues without even knowing it. Stop rushing to be the guy that looks smart with your draft pick, right? If you draft Marv at 1.09 because you're going to be the guy that gets to brag about it, well, who did you pass up on? You passed up on A.J. Brown and Saquon Barkley and Puka Nacua and Josh Allen, right, et cetera, et cetera. So don't try to rush to the draft board to be the smart guy. Just let the draft come to you in all cases, and you will probably end up with much better teams if you just fade the noise. Don't get too hyped on one player and let it what does Derek always say? Don't let it put you on tilt when Marvin Harrison goes ahead of where you had him slated.
And it could be a really tough pill to swallow. Like, we don't get all the things right, but we do get a lot of things right that other people got wrong, whatever, right? So be careful. I would much rather say, you know what? Marvin Harrison is incredible in college. He's the number 1 wide receiver. I know the eye test tells me all that. I did the film, the analytics, the stuff. Marvin Harrison is the dude. And I've seen what rookie wide receivers have done. Do I trust the Cardinals? Do I trust Kyler Murray? Do I trust the offense? Not really. I certainly don't trust the Jaguars or Giants more than the Cardinals preseason. But Marvin Harrison was like, eh. And then what Matt said is the most important. It's not Marvin Harrison. It's who's around him. I know what A.J. Brown's going to do. I know what Saquon Barkley could do. I know what Devontae Adams is going to do on a bad team. And what if he does go to Aaron Rodgers eventually, right? I know what like George Kittle can do at my tight end. Maybe I want to lock that up. I'm going to fade Marvin Harrison this year. Yeah.
All right, he's coming in and out, Dave. Oh, we lost Dave too.
I'm back. Team's going to laugh me out of the room, and I totally understand that if you end up missing. But fortunately, you can recap it again next year if that's something that you want to do. So that's going to be fading the noise from Dave. I totally agree. My last one, and we'll get out of here, is just maybe getting rid of the tight end position. I've tried for years, and it's just exhausting. I'm probably just going to get rid of the tight end position at this point. I mentioned earlier that I want to have some cool, funky roster situations. I'm going to do that. Tight ends are fun. If they click and you end up with Brock Bowers on accident, awesome. You hit George Kittle in the year he stays healthy, awesome. Trey McBride is so great without a touchdown, awesome. But then Jonnu Smith, Zach Ertz comes back to earth. Tyler Kraft comes out of nowhere. David Njoku finally pops off. Pat Freiermuth, Hunter Henry, Cade Auden, all these guys you don't expect in preseason, they go off too. The tight end position is rough. Either make it a tight end / flex, so you don't have to play tight end and you can grab the tight end, the top end guys if you want to, or just get rid of the position and add another flex. So you can add a tight end if you want, but you don't have to play them. The other part of that, though, is Sam Laporta, Mark Andrews specifically, even Travis Kelce were droppable. Jeff came on the program like week 5 when Matt had a waiver article, and Jeff said, oh, I picked up Mark Andrews on waivers this week. I'm sorry, what? You picked up Mark Andrews on waivers for free when everyone drafted him in the second round? Yeah, because he was terrible. He was droppable with 2 back-to-back donuts. After 3 and 9 fantasy points, he went 0 for 0. But guess what? He ended up as the tight end 6 on the season because he's Mark Andrews. Travis Kelce was, let me see, I just had it, 6-1-7. That was his fantasy points in PPR before he became Travis Kelce. He ends up as the number 4 tight end in PPR. Hang on to the studs if you're going to draft your tight ends. Otherwise, just let it go. We can't predict touchdowns. We can't predict health, but we can predict who's good and what offenses target the tight end. Matt, go ahead.
Isaiah Likely is Mark Andrews if he's not on the Ravens. But go back and look at the amount of fab dropped on Isaiah Likely heading into week 2.
Yeah.
For 1 week.
Yep.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, like, if you're going to play tight end, go big or go home. That's my thing. If you're going to play tight end, you have to have a tight end. Get your guy. And yes, they might have a dud early on, but you know what? It's a tight end. Nobody saw Jonnu Smith coming until it happened for 6 weeks in a row in week 13. So you either got him on waivers or you didn't, right? Zach Ertz was out of the NFL last year before he ends up on Washington. He ends up as the wide receiver 7 because that offense targets the tight end position. So that's what we're going to get into in the offseason as well. What the schemes look like in the positions that we love or hate, right? So get rid of kicker, get rid of defense if you want to. Maybe start fading out tight end too, if that's something that you want to do. Couple more comments here from Jamie, and gentlemen, we're going to get out of here. Jamie's got a lot, which, Jamie, we always appreciate you jumping in. We're going to read those on the back end, but to share with the public here, I think that some of the fun ones here were basically just getting rid of the tight end position and implementing tight end premium to balance out. So that's 1.5 points for catches for the tight end position. I like that. And then he's been implementing a roster of 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, mandatory positions, 6 flex and a super flex, and then a tight end premium. Bigger points, more flexibility in your roster, more flexibility on your waivers, and the drafts become totally unpredictable. I love that. And Jamie's last thing here, the RB dead zone may not be that dead, right? A lot of these guys you end up getting in the 4, 5, 6 rounds a few years ago, that was the case. Running back is coming back now. So you end up getting some of those like dead zone players. James Conner was drafted in the 6th round this year. He was a league winner down the stretch. Keep an eye on that. All right, that's what we learned in 2024, and those are our biggest surprises as well. Gentlemen, we got one long in the tooth here to kick off the year. I love it, Anything else? We'll go around the horn here. Matt, I'll start with you. Then we'll go to Dave, and I'll rally us out. Anything else you want to mention off script? Any comments that you have lately before we get into the thing? Any shouts out to the website, a tool, an article, anything you'd like to set? Closing out 2024, heading into 2025. Matt, the floor is yours.
Kate Upton to the San Francisco Giants.
Big one.
Somebody mail me a hat, 7 1/4. Appreciate it.
You got a Kate Upton custom Bay Area. Do you want the what is it? The Thursday night, the alternative hat, the fog hat we have, or do you want just the old school black and orange?
SF's old school, fitted, obviously, right? Just like this.
I got you.
I don't know how often I'll wear it. Maybe when I put my Kate Upton poster up on the wall, I'll wear it.
Yeah, big acquisition there. Yeah, Buster Posey making moves there. Kate Upton heading on a 1-year prove-it deal with her husband, who is Justin Verlander, I believe. But they're both heading to the Bay Area for this year. Dave, anything else you'd like to add here for the 2024-2025 interim?
Yeah, now that I'm done crashing the program, I'd just like to say thanks a lot to Jamie for hanging with us tonight. I loved reading your comments, and it's great having you on the show. Thanks so much, man. Specifically,
shout out to Razzball and their slot versus wide tool, helping me win the championship. Can we give Jamie just an easy kind of a golf clap, a thumbs up? I'll even give him a $5 from Sunday morning, whatever you want to do. Jamie, big moves, man. Appreciate you and the shout out to your tools. And also, Jamie runs his own podcast and YouTube channel, Ladies and Folks. So please make sure to go support our good friend Jamie. And he is right. The slot versus wide tool, home and away splits. We're going to have ADP tools. We're going to have trade analyzers. We got all of it available for you for free at football.razzball.com. Even more so, though, if you'd like to, this is really the bang for your buck. Go ahead and subscribe to the tools. Our good friend Rudy on the back end makes all these tools. There's even more available to you, but it's too much to just give away for free. We can't give away the house for free, folks. So go subscribe as well to those tools and get a subscription to the Razzball. That's football, baseball as well. Go check that out. That's incredible tools that will help you in the off season, help you into the new season 2025, and bring home that fantasy football championship. Again, you can find everything on Razzball NFL on X. You can find Styles at Styles08, Cruiser128 for Dave, and myself, Sky Guasco on X as well. Everything available at football.razzball.com. You can find the podcast and the YouTube channel at the Fantasy Football Razzball channels. We appreciate everybody hanging out for us. That is Jamie hanging out there at the Going for Two and the RPO Fantasy Show. Not a sponsor, but a good friend of the show. Jamie, we love you, buddy. Thanks so much for everything once again, and congratulations to your titles. We're going to be with you, handful of episodes. I'll be back with you tonight. Might be a solo run, but old school style, getting into a mock draft heading into 2025. So check back with me tomorrow evening. That is Thursday here in the States. Once again, folks, we are the Razzball Fantasy Football Show. For my good friends, Matt and Dave, I'm your host, Sky Guasco. We'll catch you next time on the Razzball Fantasy Football Show. Be good to yourself and each other. We are out of here.